The umbrella I forgot to return. The rain began before I left the apartment, the kind that made the city look half erased. Buildings fading into mist, cars moving slower than usual, the air smelling faintly of rust and wet pavement. I almost stayed home, but I'd already made plans I couldn't back out of. I took the umbrella by the door. The handle had a small chip on one side. It had been there for years, but I still noticed it every time. That umbrella used to belong to someone else. I met him a long time ago, in the kind of season when rain feels constant but never dramatic, just enough to make everything damp. We worked in the same building, though in different departments. He was the kind of person who blended easily into a crowd, quiet voice, sleeves always rolled up, eyes that made you think he was listening even when you weren't saying much. The first time we spoke was in the elevator. It was full, and someone's coffee spilled near the door. I moved back quickly, but he reached out, steadying my arm before I slipped. I remember how ordinary the gesture was, and how, for some reason, it stayed with me. A few days later, I saw him again by the entrance, holding an umbrella. It was raining, and I had none. He waited until I stepped out, then said, "We're going the same way, right?" It wasn't exactly a question. We walked together that evening, our steps uneven at first, trying not to bump into each other under the small umbrella. The rain tapped against the fabric like it had something to say. He told me he had just moved into the city. I told him I'd been here all my life but still didn't know all the street names. We laughed at things that weren't particularly funny. When we reached the corner where our paths split, he said, "See you tomorrow." And I said, "Sure," though I didn't know if I meant it. But he was there again the next day. Soon, it became a habit, walking together when it rained, talking about nothing in particular. He liked to ask questions. "What did you have for breakfast? What's the longest you've stayed awake? Do you believe people are meant to meet?" Sometimes I'd answer. Sometimes I'd ask back. There was never anything official between us. No confessions, no promises. Just a rhythm that built itself slowly, like a song you hum before realizing you've memorized it. Then one Friday evening, as the rain came down heavier than usual, I was about to leave when he appeared at my desk. He held out the umbrella. "Take it," he said. "You'll need it more than I will." I tried to refuse, but he insisted. "I'll get it from you on Monday." He never did. That weekend, something happened. I didn't know until I came to work on Monday and his desk was empty. Someone said he'd been transferred to another branch. Someone else said he'd left the company altogether. No one seemed sure, and I didn't ask too much. I didn't want to look like I cared more than I should. I sent him one message that afternoon, something polite, something forgettable. He replied with a short thank you and a promise to catch up soon. That was the last time we spoke. I kept the umbrella by my door after that. For a while, I thought of returning it. But I didn't know how to reach him anymore. And maybe a part of me didn't want to. It felt strange, but the umbrella had become a quiet reminder of a time that wasn't love, but wasn't nothing either. Years passed. The fabric faded. The handle chipped. I moved apartments twice. Somewhere in the process, most of my belongings changed: furniture, curtains, even the way I arranged my kitchen. But the umbrella stayed. Sometimes I'd see someone who looked like him from a distance, on a train, crossing a street, walking into a cafe, and I'd wonder if he'd recognize me if we ever met again. The thought used to ache. Then, one day, it didn't. Life kept moving. Work. Friends. People who came and went. Seasons that repeated themselves until I stopped counting. And then, today, it rained again. I went out because I needed to, not expecting anything. But life, in its own quiet way, likes to circle back. I saw him outside a bookstore, not immediately, but after my eyes adjusted through the blur of rain. He looked older, of course. His hair was shorter, a little gray around the sides. But it was him. He was holding a bag of groceries and standing under a cafe awning, watching the street as if waiting for the rain to change its mind. For a few seconds, I stood across the road, unsure. My first thought was to walk away before he saw me. Some people, when you meet them again after too long, feel more like memories than people. You don't want to touch them, in case they disappear. But then he looked up. He didn't seem surprised. Just calm. Like he'd already expected this to happen one day. I crossed the street, slow but certain. When I reached him, we both hesitated before speaking. "Hi," he said first. "Hi." That was it. 2 short words that somehow carried everything we hadn't said all those years ago. He asked how I'd been. I told him I was fine, that I was still working in the city. He said he'd been away for a while, a few places, a few years. Married now, with a daughter. He said it the way you mentioned something ordinary, not to impress, just to share. I nodded, smiled, and told him that was nice. I meant it, mostly. There was a pause, not uncomfortable, but delicate. He looked at the umbrella in my hand. "Is that the same one?" he asked. I glanced down. I hadn't realized I'd brought it. Habit, I guess. "It is," I said. "It's yours." He laughed softly. "I guess it's yours now." We stood there a moment longer, talking about the weather, about how the city still floods in the same places, about how everything seems different but also the same. I don't remember half of what was said. I just remember the feeling, the strange ease of standing next to someone who once mattered, and realizing you didn't need to reclaim anything. Eventually, he checked his watch and said he should go. His voice was gentle, but sure. "It was good to see you," he said. "You too." He smiled, then stepped out into the rain. I watched him walk away until he disappeared into the crowd. The city swallowed him like it always had. When I got home, I left the umbrella by the door again. It leaned slightly, the way it always did. I thought about throwing it away, but I couldn't. Not out of sentiment, but because it felt unnecessary. Some things don't need endings. They just need to be left where they belong. That night, it rained again, the quiet kind that stays just long enough to remind you it's there. I sat by the window, lights off, listening. I thought about how people pass through your life like weather. Some storms last an hour, some a season. Some never leave, even when they're long gone. He once told me that umbrellas are strange things. They don't stop the rain, they just give you space to move through it. I hadn't thought of that in years. But sitting there, listening to the rain slide against the glass, it made sense. Maybe that's what he had been for me all along, not shelter, not forever, but a small space to breathe when the world felt too heavy. And maybe that's enough.